Good morning. My name is Joe Peltzer from Guy at the Movies. How are you?
Hey, how are you?
Wonderful, Annaleigh. Thanks for joining today. I'm sure that this is back to back, so hopefully we'll move through this and you're not getting a lot of repeat questions. I know that's always a challenge here. Um, Annaleigh, I'm really interested just to dive into your character of Esther. Not a ton of screen time, but such an impact in the film, especially to Sarah Paulson's character of Margaret. I'm wondering what your initial take was when reading the script and seeing Esther's journey from sort of really involved, concerned mother to what we ultimately see at the end of the film.
You know, it's always fascinating to play women who've experienced trauma with a capital T. This is somebody who's had to navigate not only the world uh, as it was in that era, being a woman, but unfortunately, it was so common for the generations that came before us as women to experience like some really incredible trauma. Um, Unfortunately, many people lost children in the ages that came before us. And, it's one of the most uncomfortable traumas that a human can experience. And while as an actor, it was an uncomfortable um, story point to process and to share as an artist, I think it's so important that we are reminded of how uncomfortable and challenging it was to be a human not so long ago.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I just found her also her arc in the piece really to be fascinating and to watch somebody find healing is always, I think, a story that I want to be a part of telling.
Absolutely. It struck me how the juxtaposition between Margaret's journey and then your character of Esther's journey, how Esther did find that healing by the end, but also that even when not on screen, Esther's impact, I think, on the character that Sarah Paulson was portraying was so prevalent and so palpable. And you talked a little bit about trauma with a capital T, and it was shocking to me to learn that this film was written prior to the COVID-19 pandemic because the parallels are just striking. And I'm wondering if that played in at all to how you portrayed this character and brought in emotions that you may have experienced over the past 5 or so years, 4 years really, given what we've all collectively been through.
Absolutely. It's so interesting to watch how Esther's arc is such a parallel in the opposite direction of Sarah's character. As my character starts to find strength and hope, Sarah's character starts to crumble. And what she's so afraid of becoming somebody who's as weak as Esther, she ultimately has to struggle and succumb to. There's a couple threads of this film that were super fascinating to me. Right when I picked it up to read it, I was so overwhelmed by the parallel of climate change and climate disaster, and how just 100 years ago we did something really extreme to the land and the land spoke back. And it's just a great reminder that a climate disaster happened within the last 100 years. And it really changed the way that people chose to treat the land and treat the climate. Um, but again, it's a reminder that Mother Earth is a living, breathing thing, and she'll tell you when she's not happy and when she's sick. So there's that thread. And then the other thread that was so fascinating to me was this idea of pandemic and isolation, which is what happened to those people who lived in the Dust Bowl. Um, I was really lucky as a child to know my great grandmas and grandpas, and some of them grew up in this part of the country during this era. And the trauma that they experienced was so profound, it shaped the way that they behaved for the rest of their life. And I think what you see in this film is the incredible loss that these people experienced, and the isolation that these people experienced, and how both of those things are an illness to us as humans and really affect our mental health, which in that era was just sort of an afterthought. And so through, I think Sarah's character, you really get to explore the way that women were treated in the challenges that they experienced with mental health.
Yeah, that's so striking that you say that because some of what we see happen in the film is that as soon as the women are displaying any sense of mental health, the first reaction is to take the children and isolate the women. And that was very impactful. And there were so many pieces of this film that, of course, the suspense and the overall intent of the film itself in delivering that suspenseful film was or suspenseful experience was great. But it's those smaller moments that I think are so impactful. And you know, you can tell your stage training and the success that you've had on Broadway and such coming through in those moments because, as I said, just seeing the look on your face as you know Margaret's walking away and your child's being taken away, seeing the hurt there really just communicates exactly what these women were going through at the time and how they were treated.
Absolutely. You know, I always sort of reflect on how poorly the generations that came before us were treated, not only with mental health, but the way they were treated as mothers. You know, it's one of the most profound tragedies to lose a child. And unfortunately, it was not uncommon through the ages.
Mm.
Um, and unfortunately, it was um, something that was kind of a challenge to navigate as an actor. Of course, it's uncomfortable, but I think it was so necessary for the storytelling. And also, you know, as storytellers, we want to help audiences learn and grow. And I think that was a thread of the story that helps us see what came before and how to move forward.
Absolutely. I'm wondering how you, as an actor, go about choosing these roles. And the reason I ask is because you committing to Broadway, committing to Sweeney Todd or Rent or whatever it may be, is a long-term commitment versus, of course, preparing for a role in film and television can also be a commitment. But you know, there's a you have to really be intentional about when you're going to take those roles. And seeing that you step into Hold Your Breath, and of course coming off of Welcome to Chippendales and coming off of, or I guess in production with Happy Face right now, I'm wondering how you go about deciding when is it time to step in front of the camera versus on the stage.
Actor for hire, that's how.
That's the most honest answer I think I've ever received.
I can give you like a long, beautiful answer about how I choose as an artist and what I'd like to do. You know what I'd like to do? I'd like to act. I'd like to work. So really, honestly, I've been so lucky and sounds trite to be like, I've been so blessed to play lots of different parts and lots of different mediums, but it's true. I'm just really lucky. You know, it's kind of like rolling the dice. You just never know what's going to come next. And that's kind of one of the gifts of being an artist. It's like, what are you going to paint next? Well, let's see what kind of canvas I get. You know, it's kind of fabulous. So I've been really lucky that way. But I remember when I was first starting out as an actor, I would read Uta Hagen's book, Respect for Acting, like all the time. I still read it like once every year. And she had this great story about somebody coming up to her at the stage door and saying, I just wanted to talk to you for just a minute because I want to know what you're like as a person because every part you've played has been so different. You know, and I find that to be sort of an objective of mine is to get to play everything different that I possibly can. And having people say, you were so different in this and you were so different in that. I can't figure out what you are, who you sometimes sometimes not great for me as a person in the business because people don't know, you know, they just whatever they saw me in last, they think I am, you know. But also, what a great compliment. It's like the Udahagen compliment. I'll take it.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's so funny because as I was reading just some of the other stage shows that you had been in, and Rent was the one that stuck out the most to me because Maureen is such the polar opposite of the character that you play in this film.
Yeah.
And I guess in terms of, choosing when to be on stage and taking advantage of opportunities that come to you for film, is there one over the other that you prefer more, or is it, you said, the art of acting in general, is there one that you find more fulfilling?
They're both fulfilling in such different ways. The camera is this close to your face, so I can tell you the secret that's in my heart and my head with my eyes. And so when I'm on stage and the audience is, so far away that I can't see their faces, I have to tell you what's in my heart and my head with my body and with my voice. So they're different mediums, but at the heart of it, all of the all of the craft is the same. And that's kind of what's magical about it. And ultimately, you're communicating with an audience and telling them a story and trying to make the world a better place. Or at least, I mean, that's what I think good storytelling is.
Mhm,
Um,
absolutely.
so, but yes, I think I love them both, but in like totally different ways. It's, and also my family loves them both in different ways, Like when I'm doing a musical, my day, I wake up and my whole life revolves around what I'm going to do at 8 o'clock that night. What I eat, what I drink, how I go to sleep, if I pick my kid up, if I don't pick my kid up, what's the weather like? And on film, it's different. You get Saturday and Sunday off. That's a big difference. But there, but I have to leave and be gone for, sometimes weeks at a time. And, hi diddly do the actor's life for me. I get stories, play different people.
It's excellent, and it's so interesting hearing how you communicate with the audience on film versus when you're in a musical and on stage. Because again, going back to Esther, I think you see that. You see it in the moments that we have with her, in her facial expressions, in her body movements, and in the arc ultimately. So I think that just as a juxtaposition to Sarah Paulson's Margaret, it was really intense, but really impactful for the overarching story. And I'm wondering, with Hold Your Breath behind you, what the next project is for you.
Well, I just finished filming a show called Happy Face that'll come out on Paramount Plus. It's the real story of Melissa Moore, whose father was the Happy Face murder, and she's done extraordinary work for victim and families of victims, and also the families of perpetrators. Advocacy for really those who've been touched by the trauma of crime. So it's a wild story about her coming out as the daughter of a serial killer. Um,
Oof.
really taps into a lot of themes that are uncomfortable and important to explore. Um, and really just looking at the relationship between the two sides of the courthouse, those who are the families of the perpetrator and those who are families of the victim. And again, how they're both victims of whatever crime took place. So that's coming out, just light fare, some
Like
light
fair,
fare,
you seem to be drawn to trauma in trauma
but
stories.
always good characters. They're the extremes. And unfortunately, I would say when you're sitting on the subway train, you could go shake each person's hand and they're all going to be able to tell you at least some part of their life has been touched by trauma. And so I think again with a film like this, with a show like Happy Face, the more examples that we can show people to how to heal, the better.
And I appreciate you saying that. One of the things that I love about filmmaking, television, art in general is people make fun of me all the time, but I refer to slice of life films, and I love seeing true stories, whether they're told in fantastical, recreations or whatever it may be, but really honing in on what people are experiencing and giving them something to relate to, I think is important in art. And it sounds like that is something that's on the front of your mind, and especially with the roles that you've taken, as well as the performances that you've delivered. I just thank you for that, because it's, even the way that you have framed Hold Your Breath and the experience of the women at the time. I think it's remarkable. So I appreciate you being willing to share all that. And I think our time is about up, but I want to thank you so much for taking the time today, and again for such a great performance in Hold Your Breath.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Absolutely, you as well.